off-season throwing programs, and again, some of these high schools and the northern schools, obviously not everybody's in Florida or Texas and can get outdoors and play catch, but high school off-season throwing programs for kids. I know there's a lot of indoor facilities around. What are some suggestions for these guys, and what should they be doing in the off-season?
If you say throw all year round, and you maybe a lot of parents think like competing, and I think it's really important to define what throwing means. Throwing can mean throwing a tennis ball. It can be throwing 40 throws at 60% twice a week. So especially if you're a high school player or a youth player that's playing 4 different sports, to just throw twice or 3 times a week lightly and just kind of remind your body that you can do this thing is probably better than not picking up a ball for 2 months and then thinking you're just going to go right into a bullpen, which, potentially at 14, you're not as sore as I would be if I did that right now. But I think it is important to think more around year-round throwing can be all different levels of throwing. And so, potentially understanding like anything like being in a weight room. So if you treat throwing like being in a weight room, you wouldn't go max out on squat the first day in a weight room. You'd build up to it. It's the same thing with throwing. And I think the more and if you don't go in a weight room for 2 months, boy, it's going to suck that first day. So that's how I think that's maybe potentially an easy way to think about it for younger youth players is, throwing 2 or 3 times a week, even into a net, into a wall in your backyard is probably going to be better than not.
Obviously, first round draft pick, played in the Cardinals organization, but bounced around, professional baseball, and now has jumped into the coaching ranks. Before my Stetson days, I was at Maine, and we used to travel down and play 11 all the time at, Coach Martin. For those of you that don't know him as 11 at Florida State. And I remember the first time going out and watching batting practice and sitting there and watching you take ground balls, take fly balls. You were bunting, you were hustling the first base. And I remember saying, my God, who the heck is this guy? And this might have been like 2009 or 2010 when we were down there. We played you a couple of years in a row. And sure enough, go back and look at it. I think you destroyed us that weekend with your stats. I think we gave you all the records that weekend. And I was just so impressed of how much energy you brought to that team. And you were their superstar. You were their captain and their guy that everybody leaned on. And, you did it by example. And I think that's why, I was excited to have you be part of this year with the World Baseball Coaches Association clinic, I should say, and also speaking here today. But, leading into that, with all that energy that I saw when you were a player, and now that you're in the coaching ranks, what did you do to get you to where you are today? Not only as a player, but probably more so, let's talk about like your coaching path, even though, you're kind of just jumping into that side of thing over the last few years. But, what did you do to get to that path right now?
Yeah, of course, I appreciate the kind words. I think that I had a lot of great guys in the lineup with me and coaching staff that believed in me. And so I think that always made it easier to go out there and kind of lay it on the line every day. Obviously I have to, shout out my mom and dad and, just the way that they raised me to always reach my potential. I tried to hustle in the classroom. I tried to hustle kind of off the field as well. I always try to take advantage of just my platform, whatever that was. And so I think in going through playing days, I always tried to be a sponge. I wasn't always the biggest, fastest, strongest. I wasn't always necessarily, the smartest, but I felt like if I could use my mind as a separator and I could just pick up on little things that made other people successful. And that was the one thing in my playing days. I didn't love getting traded around and bouncing around on 40-man rosters and whatnot, but I got to play with so many big league all-stars and also so many guys that got a cup of coffee and you would have never guessed just because they always were consistent performers. They use the mental side of the game. And like you said, there's nothing that, I see them all the time on the internet of like things you can always control of your effort and, just your mentality. I think that's something that I think allowed me to jump in and never forgetting how hard the game was to the players. Say, listen, man, I was just where you guys were. It slows down a lot when you get outside the foul lines. And so I think that, when you talk through Mike Martin and Danny Hall, the 2 coaches that I've coached under, a lot of them, they see the world kind of different ways, maybe in terms of actual development. But their players always know they care about them. And so I think that was kind of the resounding thing for me is if you show up, you're ready to go, you truly love what you do, your players can kind of feel that, smell that off you. and the buy-in is just going to increase regardless of what your message is.